Hi everyone, my name's Alisha. I'm a DTP student. I am a third year PhD student at the University of Southampton, and this is basically just a quick video just giving an overview of how to write a proposal to the DTP. This will go over an example from myself because I was accepted by the DTP. This was my application, this is my research proposal. If you want to see other videos on how to tackle the rest of the application, those are also provided by Niall for the DTP, so you can look at those if you're interested in that a bit later. But this is about writing the research proposal itself, the project proposal, whatever you want to call it. This is my top tips for writing your project proposal. So I've split it into these groups and I've put it in this order because this is exactly how my application looked basically, but yours could look a lot different to mine. I am based in the School of English. My project is English. It does intersect with different fields of study. Like it does incorporate ethnographic writing and things like that. But you know, it all depends on your subject. You could be coming from a music background or from archaeology. So of course there is some leeway. Things don't have to look as mine do. It's just an example so you can get some ideas hopefully from how your proposal needs to look basically in order to have a successful application. So I've split it up into these. So start off is a summary, then aims, then research context, which is basically like a lit review kind of thing. Research questions, methodology, yes, if you're in English or any of these subjects, it's really good to have a methodology. It might sound absolutely bizarre at this stage, but you do. Chapter outline, timeline, which means the timeline of how you see your PhD going, what you think you're going to do during your PhD, but I'll go into more detail later, and also references, which I don't really go over. It just literally means a bibliography of your resources. That might not be necessary for your proposal, but I just put it there because it was part of mine and it's something to consider if you haven't already. So just to start off with the summary, this was my summary. I think it's always good when you're writing a research proposal to have a summary of what your project is. It's very difficult to get a summary in such a small amount of words, but that introduction is something, it's basically like when you think about when you're writing a CV, the first introduction, it needs to be a summary of your project basically. You need to tell the person reading it what on earth they're going to expect for the rest of it basically. Like you would in your essays, when you're writing an introduction, you have to inform the reader of what they're about to see coming up, and also it sets a sort of tone, so it's really good to have a summary. So what I've done here is I've just highlighted different parts of my summary that I think you should consider including in your summary if you do choose to have one in your proposal. And I've also highlighted in yellow highlighter just sort of certain terminology that I think you could possibly place in your summary because it emphasizes, it sets the tone for writing research proposals. So I'll just start off by reading the bubbles. You can pause this video at any point if you want to read my examples yourself. I'm not going to do that here because it would take a very long time, and of course this is my project and you'll probably find it too specific and not very helpful, so I thought I'd just focus on what actually these words mean and how they could be applicable to you. So first off, I've said you need to consider, why is your project so relevant today? Because that is the biggest question to a funding body, and that's what they will ask when they see your project. Well, why now? Why do we need to fund this project now? Why is it so timely? Why couldn't it have been done previously? Why hasn't it been done previously? What makes it so important today to give money to you to do this project? And that's why I put it right at the very front of the application, because that's most important to funders, just that one little line. And I've said it here, this timely project, and it might sound silly, it's just like, oh, that's quite like sort of it's praising yourself, but you need to have this confident language when you are applying for funding. You need to portray this sort of idea that you believe and you truly think that this is a timely project, and say why. So I said this timely project responds to the recent shift in migration studies. And then I go on to explain exactly what the shift is, very briefly. But that summarises why my project is relevant today when I applied. Next is you need to consider what makes your project so unique. So again, it's about placing your project basically, and that's the third point I've got on here. Why is your project so significant to its field? So that also might cross over with why it's unique. It might have a unique methodology. It might be if you're doing an ethnographic project that incorporates, it might be ethnography with English or history or whatever. Maybe you're devising a new type of like ethnography that you're testing with, or your project will like examine ethnography of a particular type of group of people that have never been discussed before. You know, we have to think about what is so unique about this project. Why on earth would the DTP want to fund your project, and why now? That's basically a summary of the summary. And also, what gap will it address? What gap, so research gap, will your project attempt to fill or tackle in some way? And I'll just read over the highlighted terms because I think they're quite helpful for you to put into your summary as well. So I said this timely project, I haven't highlighted it, but I do think that's important, responds to the recent shift, again, settling the project into a particular field. That's also very important in the summary introduction. This study's significance, again, you're emphasising that your project is important, but it devises and you're saying what it is contributing, what it is, what's so special basically, what makes it unique, what are you giving to the field. And I've got it contributes to and it provides new insights. So these are sort of phrases that you can also adopt when writing your summary. So next is aims. This is exactly, I'm laying this out in the structure that I had in my actual application to the DTP. So here I just, again, I'm not going to read over mine because that'd be too specific to my project, but just to give you some idea, you need to think about what material you are examining. So this could be so many different things because it depends on what your subject is, and also within a certain subject there's going to be so many different materials that you could analyse, but you need to make this clear quite early on, and it's nice to actually put that in your aims. So here I've said like explore contemporary and placement processes in the UK in fictional and ethnographic narratives. Of course, this changed drastically as my project happened, but the whole point of a proposal is you're proposing something. It doesn't have to be exactly set in stone what is actually going to happen. You just have some sort of idea as to how you're going to start this project. So I've said here fictional ethnographic narratives based in the UK. So I've already told who is reading this what sort of materials I'll be looking at, which is important. And then I've put what is the focus of your examination. So what very specifically are you going to look at when you examine these texts, whatever they are? What are you specifically looking at? What are you zooming in on? And you need to emphasize that. And again, in the aims, it's a very clear-cut way of really showing the panel what you are going to focus on. And this is a nice little quick summary to put it in the aims basically. And then you can also mention how you will analyse that data set, or how you will analyse that text, and what methods, and that can be your final aim. Again, this is just some ideas. Your projects are going to be very vastly different depending on your subject, but this is just hopefully giving you some ideas as to how you can start writing and organising, structuring your application. So this is one of the biggest sections, I would say, of my application, and probably yours as well, is outlining the research context, and it's basically a literature review of sorts. I use the term research context because I think it's a bit more, I think it emphasises that there's a field with things already placed in it, and people have already established things and opinions and knowledge within it, and you are situating yourself in that field. I think it emphasises that more. So some tips I've got here and things that I have outlined is that you need to set the scene. So what is the problem or gap that your project will tackle? This is about emphasising what field you are actually contributing to and how. And that's the whole point of this research context. And this is one of the really major points in the application, because you are letting the panel know, whoever reads this, you are letting them know that you are aware of scholarly opinions and works that have really that will foreground your research basically. These are the foundations you are building your project on, or perhaps these are the foundations that you might actually take apart in some way and rebuild in your own way. So it's basically just acknowledging the research that's already there, and this is really vital because that's, that shows good research and you're contributing to knowledge, which is the whole point of a PhD. Next, I've put, have other scholars tackled this issue? And I've put chipped away at it. If so, say. So it's really vital. If there's somebody in your field of study that's basically said something so exactly relevant to your project and you haven't mentioned that they have chipped away at this problem and contributed to this knowledge, the person reading it could be an expert and they will be an expert, in what you're talking about. And if they know this person, they go, gosh, it's quite strange that they haven't mentioned so and so, and the fact that they contributed to this field quite recently, that's quite odd that they haven't come across that. So you need to emphasize if that's the case. And it doesn't show a weakness of your project. It shows that the project you're proposing is very lively and happening today. And again, this emphasizes it as timely. It's relevant in today's context. So it doesn't matter if other people have also tackled the issue, but you're contributing to it in more ways by developing your project. So I've put, after that, I've put, what exactly is your project's focus? Be as specific as possible. So again, the research context, I think it can work as a sort of funnel where you can go from the bigger ideas and you can go more specific as you go down. So here, I'll just sort of try to break it up here. So I've started off right at the top, refugee experiences, and I've also talked about displacement and movement. So they're the big ideas that are quite vast. And then I keep moving down, and then I talk about homemaking, dwelling, and then it's getting closer and closer and closer to what my focus is. And then I bring in Britain because that's my context. I'm also bringing in the fact that I'm talking about home as an intensely political place. Again, it's about narrowing this focus down exactly to the molecular level of what you're exactly doing. And then I've said here, go into more detail about your focus, which is basically the funneling effect that I discussed just now. Name relevant scholars in this field and situate your project in the field. Again, that's basically just reiterating what I just said. So here I've put research questions. I think when you're starting out and writing your project, it is really, really difficult to come up with these sort of things. And the same with chapter outlines. You just think to yourself, wow, it's so massive. And how am I meant to think about these things if I haven't even done it? But it's good to just get some ideas down. Then again, they're not set in stone. It just gives whoever is reading your application some idea as to what you're envisioning for your project, even if it will change, because it probably will as you do some research, or when you're doing your field work or whatever. It will change, but I think it's good to show them that you know what a project is meant to look like and how it's meant to be framed. So I've said to have an overall big research question and focus on particular material that you will use. Again, emphasising what sort of material you use. Will it be the fieldwork notes that you collate? Will it be certain novels, plays? Will it be certain artworks? So this is something, again, you can re-emphasise these little parts of your project within the research questions. So if your research questions were just extracted from your application, that person should be able to get some sort of gist as to what your project is doing, but in like a very like a bullet pointed way. And I've said here, to also consider what is the focus of your examination, and this will give a hint to how your chapters will be divided. So yeah, and which actually brings me on to your methodology. So this might be extremely daunting, especially if you're coming from more of the humanities side, because I know that some projects that do come to the DTP can have an intersection with sociology, so that you're used to having, and you have field work, so you're used to having this, to developing and devising a methodology. However, if you're coming from the School of English like I am, it can be quite daunting because you think, what on earth, I need a methodology? And this might be the first time you've actually had to come up with this sort of stuff. And it's strange to think in this way. However, it will really enhance your writing, and you will have to have some sort of methodology, and it will help you. It seems quite boring to read some methodological texts and things like that, but it really does enhance your writing. And I think it shows really good practice that you're acknowledging that. And again, my methodology and my outline here has changed. It hasn't changed completely. And this outline actually really helped me when it came to the research process. So this is from an English point of view. So again, you need to set the scene. What is the problem or gap that your project will tackle / respond to? So here I put responding to the emergence of cross-disciplinary practices. So again, I'm saying that my methodology is responding to things. It is contributing to methodological fields in some way. Again, emphasizing that my project is unique and bringing something new, which is vital. Next I put, is your approach unique? If so, say why. And I think, again, this can apply to the whole project. Next I put, what texts will you examine? Again, it's really good to emphasize what material you are actually going to discuss. If it is certain parts of literature, say which ones, and be as specific as possible. Again, if you're looking at multiple things and you're scared about being specific because you don't want to be tied down to certain things, it's absolutely fine. When people read a proposal, they know this is going to reshape and change as your project goes on, as you read, as you learn, as you read new things. As if you're doing contemporary works, things constantly shift, new things will come out. You're not expected to have a crystal ball and get absolutely everything down here. It's just having some sort of idea of what text you will examine and how. So next, you need to justify and highlight interdisciplinary crossovers. I think this is really important, because just slapping in some interdisciplinary thing because you think it's trendy or you think it's snappy and people want to see interdisciplinary research, I think that does fall flat. I think you need to justify if there is an interdisciplinary crossover, in your research. You need to say why. Why have you done this crossover? Why is it relevant to your project? Why is it not just a tick box exercise because people like interdisciplinary research? You need to justify that. So basically justify everything that you're saying and don't just think of it as a tick box exercise. So lastly, I put, why examine the text material that you have chosen? What do they offer? Again, it's about not just choosing text. I didn't just say, oh, these books talk about refugees, because that wouldn't be enough. I needed to give a little bit more. I've said here the text will examine, offer accounts of experiences of emplacement in the UK from different communities, of reconstructing home in a hostile host nation, of material spaces and of imagined spaces. So I go into detail. I don't just say, oh, this is why I've chosen them. So you need to have some sort of in-depth justification, and that comes into the methodology. And this is a chapter outline. I think it is very difficult when you're starting out your project to come up with a chapter outline. And again, I've put here, this will change as your project goes on. This outline does not need to be perfect, and to just give some ideas as to what you plan to examine in detail in your project. Really breaking this down, when I was first coming up with my project, I thought to myself, right, what exactly am I going to analyse? So I thought here, conceptualising refugee domestic spaces, discussing refugee emplacement and in community spaces, how refugees deconstruct and reclaim living spaces, and creating sanctuary. And those are like sort of the little themed groups I had in my head. And I'm sure if you sat down and really thought about your project, you could come up with these sort of buzzwords, and then from then you could be like, oh, I could have a chapter on that, I could have a chapter on that, I could have a chapter on that. And that's how I did it, really. So just getting a mind map out and just picking these buzzwords and thinking, right, that could actually be a chapter. And actually, even though my chapters have changed, again, this was really helpful to the research process, because when it came to actually doing my project, I had, right, I've got these categories now. Now I look at it in little segments. It's less daunting and it's easier to endeavour to investigate a certain part of your research from then on. So that's why it's important to have a chapter outline. And it also helps the person examining and looking at your application to envision what your project's going to look like, and if it's realistic or not. And going on from being realistic, a timeline also emphasises this realism that examiners and the panel will look for in your project. Is your project realistic? Is it attempting to do too much in the time that is allocated for a PhD? Is it attempting to do things that are perhaps not, are a bit like they're overestimating what's possible in some way? So I just put, it is a very vague timeline, but I don't think it needs to be exact, because of course it will chop and change, but it just gives the panel some idea as to what I've done. So basically, I actually joined the DTP when I'd already started my first year, so that's why it says ongoing here. But of course yours won't look like that. You can just put the years that I've done in the next 2 bullet points. So I've just said, you know, write your introduction, and it can just be as vague as that, but as long as you have some timeline. And also you might find that in your institutions they ask you for some sort of timeline when you do start your PhD, like to outline so they know it's realistic. So this can there's a lot of crossovers between the application and what your university, your home institution will ask of you as well, documentation. So it can help that as well. And it gives you some idea as well, like some vague outline of what you want to do. And I've put here like submit an article for publication at a specific journal. I didn't do that, but I did get published during that year because I came across a journal that I wanted to contribute to, and I did. And I've also participated in conferences in both of those things, so I have achieved those things. So again, aim high, discuss conferences. If you want to go to a specific conference and apply to it in a certain year, say it. That's really important because you're showing that you want to be active in a research network of people, and you're contributing to the field in exciting and new ways. And same with if you want to publish, aim high. Aim high. If you have a certain journal that you think, oh, I would love to contribute to that journal or whatever, just put it in here because it shows that you're going to attempt to do these things. So thank you so much for listening. Again, I didn't talk about references because you know how to reference, I'm sure. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found this helpful. Again, I come from the School of English, and I understand that a lot of what I've just said might not be extremely applicable to your application if you're coming from a different school. However, I hope you can extract some crucial information that I've given you, and some top tips, and even just some language that you could use to emphasize that your project is important, that it is timely, and that it is contributing to the field and locating and filling a gap in research. And good luck with your application. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I'll finish there. Thank you.